Hello and welcome back to Brick Wall Discussions. My name is Benny Mates. I'm here with my co-host Nate Warnowski, and once again joining us is Pastor Vernon Reisner from First Baptist Church. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Well, we are diving right back into where we left off. We're going to start off reading Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 32, and then we will go from there. Awesome. So we have read through Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 32. Now we are going to continue through the questions that we have through the book from Jared Wilson from Crossway. So the first question here says, Romans 1, verse 20 is reminiscent of Psalm 19. And it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. How do the things that have been made give clear evidence of God's eternal power and divine nature?
Well, I've got so many things here I'd like to share. I can't share all of them, but there was something here that I wrote down from Hugh Ross.
Okay.
And he talked about how only Christianity brings answers in a fundamental and coherent way to four of life's biggest questions: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Now you have to think those things through, but Christianity answers all four of those questions. Beyond that, when we look at creation, when we look at the heavens, the stars, the creation of earth, we see simplicity, but we also see beauty. We see elegance and we see harmony. And none of it, how do you get those things if they're all an accident? Simplicity in the sense that a child can understand how to navigate his way through life. But yet it's very complex and very detailed in its creation. I got one more thing I'd like to read because we could spend just the whole thing on this.
Sure.
I'm going to read this. This comes from a great little book you can go online and download called What Time is Purple? And you can just Google What Time is Purple download, and you can download this whole book. This is just one page out of the little booklet, talking about living cells, the biological proteins that compose them. Now, don't get all hung up on the numbers here. Just try to grab the big picture of what we're talking about. If we consider just one simple living cell consisting of only 250 short proteins, and those 250 proteins each consisting of 150 amino acids. By the way, they can consist to up to 30,000 amino acids, but we're going super simple here. A 250 short protein cell with each protein having 150 amino acids. The odds of those, you do the multiplications, 37,500 amino acids could arrange themselves into the sequence where the cell could actually function is only one chance in 10 to the 41,000th power. Now, that's just a gigantic number beyond anything we can even conceive here, right? Here's the problem. If the universe were 14 billion years old, and that's an old estimate by estimates, there hasn't been nearly enough time for 10 to 41,000th power attempts at anything. Not by a long shot, it says. And that's only one example. Now this is where we get to understand what is 10 to the 41,000th power. Are you ready for this? To put into perspective how large a number 10 to the 41,000th power really is, that's the number of random attempts for the amino acids, 37,500, it would need to produce just one living cell. Consider that there is an estimated 10 to the 80th power atoms in the entire universe. 10 to the 80th power in the entire, even if we allowed every atom in the universe 1 trillion atomic interactions per second for all 14 billion years, that would add up to 10 to the 18th power. We'd only have 10 to 110 more powers, interactions to go. The universe isn't old enough, even at 14 billion years, to allow all of the attempts needed for all of those amino acids to put themselves in the right order in the simplest cell. Now, I know that's a whole lot of information, but it's incredible. It's incredible. And you can get this little booklet, What Time is Purple? download. Just Google it and you can have it for free.
There you go.
The heavens declare God's glory.
Yeah.
The creation declare. There has to be intelligence behind it. There has to be. We couldn't just have formed. There was one guy who said the chances of life forming all by themselves is like an explosion in a junkyard forming a perfectly functioning Boeing 747. We all know that's impossible. It's ridiculous. And we are much more complicated than any Boeing 747. A tree is more complicated on a cellular level than a Boeing 747. So there has to be intelligence behind it. There has to be a God. The heavens, creation itself, declare it. Everybody knows there's a God. Whether we admit it or not, everybody knows there's a God in here. We're wired to know. And his creation declares it.
Do you have any input on that, Nate? No. That was a lot. That was awesome. Yeah, I do. I mean, I agree. We look outside and you just like look at nature and even just to the simplest going on a walk and looking out, you can see like, wow, this all just fell into place. It can't be. There has to be design behind this because everything just works so well together. And some scientists and doctors and everyone will say like, oh, we're discovering all these different problems that we're having with our society and bodies and environments and stuff like that. Like, we don't realize just how intricate it is. And I think to try and fathom everything would just be inconceivable.
Most people who don't believe in God automatically go to the Big Bang, evolution. But even if you say, okay, let's accept the Big Bang, where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
It's scientifically impossible for everything to come from nothing. Mm-hmm. And yet, that's what the Big Bang, and if you go, what was before the Big Bang?
Sure.
There are people who even say everything came from nothing. Well, that's not possible. Scientifically, that's not possible. So everything has to come from something. And when you look at the design, the detail, the complexity of all that there's a great little illustration. It's kind of simple, but it works well. When you see a building, you instantly know there was a builder. Mm-hmm. The building proves the builder. You see a painting, you instantly know there was a painter. The painting is proof of a painter. Well, when we see creation, it's proof of a creator. And that's really what this is saying. That God in his own creation allows all of us to see the attributes, his attributes. They're all over the place. His fingerprints are everywhere.
Second question says, throughout the passage, Paul uses phrases like, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts. Specifically speaking to verse 24. It says, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, in verse 26. And God gave them up to a debased mind, in verse 28. What implications do such proclamations have for the idea of free will?
I did a lot of the talking in the first one, so I can continue to, but I want you guys to talk some too. So.
Nate, what do you think?
I think that when you look at the doctrine of free will, that people can say, oh, God's not real, but even if God isn't real and we have free will, we have the option to go make choices, right? So we come from a Christian standpoint and say, hey, God is real. We know that, we believe that. And with God giving us free will, he has to let us up to those dishonorable passions, the lusts of our heart, right? But at the same time, we know that God is so loving that he wants us, he is beckoning us back to him. He's calling us back to him. But he has to give us up.
He has to give us that freedom. What is love really love if we don't have a choice? If God just made robots, there would be no free will. And so it doesn't seem to work out. Love isn't valuable unless there's choice. I think it goes back also to the beginning. At the very beginning, we had free will, but we also had innocence. We had intelligence. We knew all the facts. If you go back far enough, they believed in God. They knew God. But then, all of a sudden, we, just like in the garden with Adam and Eve, we all have this sin nature that desires to be God ourselves. And the moment that happens, we want to explain away God so that we can do what we want. And all of this because we have free will. And when we when we do away with God so that we can do what we want, we throw ourselves into ignorance. We trade the truth of God for a lie. We make ourselves ignorant. Although we call it being wise, we're really becoming fools. And the passage, you can read it, it actually says as much.
Right.
From there, we go into our indulgences, where we can do whatever we want, however we want, whenever we want, whether it be man on man or woman on woman or whatever. I mean, just even crazier than that. And then from then, we get impenitent. We get to the place where we don't even care anymore, because that allows us to continue to live the life we want. It's a long question. I almost need to read it again to make sure that we're answering it.
I think the gist of the question is basically, with all these verses saying that God gives us up to our passions, to our desires, to our hearts, to these lusts of our hearts, what does that have? What kind of implications does that have on the idea of free will?
God doesn't want us to do this, but He gives us the freedom to do it, and sometimes, well, in our case, it's led to us, falling off the wagon and really exploring all kinds of depravity and sin. But thank God for His grace, that He still loves us even though we are sinners.
Yeah, and Paul points that out here too, is that God's grace is what leads us to follow Him.
Mm-hmm. The goodness of God leads to repentance. It's because God's good and loving and grace-oriented that He opens our eyes and we can see our mess. And if not for Him, we wouldn't even see that.
And I think sometimes we have to fall into these situations where we end up hurting ourselves so that we can see that.
Mm-hmm.
That there is a God who cares about us and has something better for us. And every single time that we think that we can be gods, that we can control it ourselves, it doesn't end up working out well because we can't.
Yeah.
We need God.
We're always searching for fulfillment apart from God,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not found because He's the creator. We've been designed for Him to fill the hole in the soul, so to speak, and it's not going to be found anywhere else other than through Him. We lie to ourselves. We continue to tell ourselves it can be found elsewhere, but not lasting fulfillment.
Question 3 says, if sinners suppress the truth, speaking to verse 18, how can Paul say that the truth is clearly perceived? So if we look at those verses 18 through 20 here, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. So how can Paul say that truth is clearly revealed, clearly perceived, if sinners are suppressing the truth?
It starts with the verse there, verse 18 starts with, the wrath of God is revealed to those who suppress the truth. So there's where the suppression comes. Because we're sinners, God's wrath is coming on us. Because we're sinners who suppress the truth, we have the wrath of God that's coming. We're going to be punished for it. But then the rest of the verse 20, it says, how can Paul say that the truth is clearly perceived? Well, it is clearly perceived, but we suppress the truth,
Right.
and therefore have the wrath of God. So he's asking the question by changing the places. Yeah. We do clearly see the truth. All of creation attests to the truth, that there is a God.
Right.
And we don't want there to be a God because we want to live our way, not His way. And so we suppress the truth. And now the wrath of God is going to come on us. because he's a holy, just judge, and he has to punish sin. If he doesn't, he's not a good God. So he has to punish sin.
So this section here, verses 18 through 32, speaks to the unrighteousness of the Gentiles, right? So Paul is revealing that even the irreligious, or in this case, they are classified as Gentiles or the non-Jews, they are aware of a holy standard. What are some ways in which even those who deny God demonstrate a tacit, what? What's that word?
Tacit awareness.
Tacit awareness? I don't know what that word is.
Well, you're from Texas.
Yeah. We don't use 5-letter words like that. In Texas. Anyway, what are some ways in which even those who deny God demonstrate a tacit awareness of moral absolutes?
Well, even somebody who's an atheist or an agnostic, somebody who's adamantly opposed to the idea of a God, they still would say, you don't have the right to come and take things that aren't yours from me. Stealing's still wrong. You can't come and beat up my mom because she didn't give you money. You can't rape my sister. You don't have to believe in God to say that stuff's wrong, that's
right.
bad. You can't just kill people for any reason, just because they have blue eyes, or they have nice wavy golden blondish brown hair. We all know you can't do that, and you don't even have to believe in God to know that's wrong. So there's a way that God's written on our hearts, our conscience. He's written on it his own law. Even though we might not believe in him, we know there are things that are just wrong, and there are things that are good. And so there's some tacit awareness of the moral absolutes, even if they don't believe in God. God's written them on all our hearts.
I would agree. Lots of those things are just inherently within us. Some people will attribute that to culture or our society, but then you look across the world and it is very dominantly there in all cultures. So it cannot just be a cultural thing that killing this person is wrong, just because you want to. Or killing this person is right just because you believe that you're justified in doing so. Everyone will look at that and say that it's wrong. So I believe definitely that these moral absolutes, these laws maybe would be written on our hearts, that we know what to be true, what to be right, and then what we do after that is still our decision, because we do still have free will. That's why you do find cultures and some people who say, no, I can do this, because even though people say it's wrong, I'm still going to do it, because we still do have that free will.
And the sin nature.
And the sinful nature.
We want to do what we want.
Right. We almost want to defy. As soon as you feel like you can't do this, it's like, why not? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go and do what you tell me that I can't do.
I have fresh baked cookies on a sheet in the kitchen. I'm going to go away for a while. Don't eat them. We want to eat them immediately.
Yeah, now you want to go eat the cookies. But going back to it, it doesn't change the fact that we have that within our hearts. We know that to be true because God has instilled that within us. Much to how God is revealed through nature, God and his will is revealed through that which he has instilled in our hearts.
All right, bear with me here.
Okay.
So I think the third and fourth question actually kind of correlate in a sense, right? Because Paul writes, if sinners suppress the truth. He doesn't say if they don't know it, they don't believe it, they suppress it. So they know the truth, but they're just making it less known, right? They don't want to know it, so they're suppressing it. This fourth question here states, what are some ways in which those who deny God, right? So they know God, they know God's real, it's written in our hearts, like you said, but they're denying God. have a tacit awareness of moral absolutes, right? So without the Bible, we wouldn't have morals. Without God, we wouldn't have morals, right? Well, we understand it. So I feel like my question leads to a question is, why? Why in today's society is it so hard to know God or to love God, but we know Him? We suppress Him. We have these moral absolutes, but we still deny God. Why?
Because we want to be God. Lucifer wanted to be worshipped alongside God in heaven. Adam and Eve were tempted. You can be like God. And here we are. Nothing's changed. It's the same story, different day. And we want to be our own God because then we can do what we want. We can lean into our own sinful natures and satisfy, or attempt anyway, to satisfy all of our cravings. And so in order to do that and to remove the guilt that comes with doing wrong, we have to explain away God. And so that's what we're working to do. Not us, but the world. The world's working to explain away God. God's dead. He doesn't exist. It's a figment of simple-minded people's imagination. And if we can get rid of Him, then we can do what we want. And nobody can say you're wrong, because there is no right or wrong. That's the danger. If there is no God, there is no right or wrong. If there is no right or wrong, then who's to say I don't kill people with gray shirts and black stripes? You can't say I can't because there's nothing wrong with it. Because there is no wrong, Kill spare cats, why not kill spare kids? And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. We can do whatever we want. And if you notice in culture, the more we move God to the periphery, the more in culture we're doing things that are crazy and things that are not natural, things that even years ago, a more sane culture to some degree would say, that's horrible, And we're doing, you can take a baby that's born and put it on a table and let it die, and that's okay? That's insanity. That's not okay. That's insane. But if we explain away God, then there's nothing to say that's wrong. And we can do anything then. We're our own gods. The only thing is Romans chapter 1 says, we're storing up God's wrath. You keep doing bad things. There is a God. He is a just God. There is coming a day where He's going to, straighten out the accounts, and there will be punishment. And the more bad we do, the more we're storing up His wrath against us. The great thing about the book of Romans is there is hope. There is an answer. And it's the gospel of Jesus Christ, the power of God unto salvation, And that's the message of the book of Romans. That we don't have to earn our way. We can believe and trust in what Jesus did for us. He took the punishment for us so that we don't have to take this punishment. But the only way that is accepted is if we trust in God. We put our faith and trust in Him. We follow after Him. There is hope. There is hope, and His name's Jesus. Great question, by the way. Great question.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and cut here because this section that we're talking through is just so vast. We're going through up until half of chapter 3. So we're going to stop this here, and then you guys can join us in the next video as we go through chapter 2 and a little bit of chapter 3 as well, going on with this study on the unrighteousness of the Gentiles and the Jews and all of us. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next video.